everybody, this is Matthew Kenslow, author of Juggling the Issues Living with Asperger's Syndrome, and in this video I want to share a story that happened 10 years ago today, and also on the 24th as well. Today is September 30th, 2020, and I was transcribing my journals from 10 years ago today, and I was uploading that on social media, but I want to really place a special emphasis on this story. I knew this day was coming up soon, but I wasn't sure until yesterday that it was today. But I want to go back to September 24th. And here on page 176, I just made a small note that in physical education at Newport Harbor High School, that we started flag football, basically. And I was a captain. And I want to, give a little commentary about that. Why the heck was I a captain? Especially since I didn't know anything about football. It's because I needed to get out there. I mean, as an autistic, we are extraordinarily shy, and by the time that this story took place when I was 15, a sophomore in high school, I was like, I've got to get out of my comfort zone if I want to have a great life, with camaraderie and friendship. I mean, I had, hundreds of friends, but, I hardly spent time with most of them. And on this day, I just, something inside of me raised my hand, and the coach just, said, okay, and picked me, and I was like one of like 8 captains, if I remember correctly. And I was on the end, and I decided, well, I gotta get out there. I mean, if, I should stop, being shy. I should stop being shy when answering a question in class, because if I get something wrong, I mean, a lot of people get something wrong, but I was just fearing the inevitable, that if I got something wrong, then it'd make the Beacon, which is the school newspaper, word would get out of the entire city, and all that. And, all that was just paranoia and such. It wasn't really going to happen, but that's what I felt as an autistic and such. And of course I knew that my friends wouldn't do that anyway, but I was just, I was very shy, extraordinarily shy. In fact, the longest chapter in my book is about shyness and social interactions. The longest chapter in this book. That's not a coincidence. Anyway, I decided to, raise my hand and, be a team captain. Okay, now I'm like, oh my gosh, who am I even going to pick? Well, I did know, a lot of people in the class. Well, actually a few people in the class. A couple of friends of mine that I met, a couple of friends from Newport Heights Elementary School and such. Anyway, so we all line up, and they start on that side. I could be sure they started on that side. And it got down to me, and by the time it got down to me, they said, okay, pick 2 people. That way they could start there, they could come to me, and then they could go backward, and then the first person would pick 2 people again. So that's why I got to pick 2 people. And I'm like, well, if I don't pick, the 2 best friends, then what if they might think something of me? So I picked these 2 friends that I just met. They were both freshmen. And one of them was like a miraculous story of how I even got to know him and such. It's a miraculous story. It'd be a video on its own. But, well, in other words, it's an extraordinary story. Extraordinary of how this happened. But, I decided to, choose him and the friend that he introduced me to. Now, according to the friend that he introduced me to, he also has Asperger's syndrome. According to him, I asked again afterward, like, did you tell me that you had Asperger's? He said yes, and it's like, I can't see that in him. And in turn, I get that a lot. Some people can't see me as an autistic. But anyway, that aside, I went ahead and picked them 2. So they came up and came behind me, and it's like, now who am I going to call out? So by the time that it got, my turn again, the second friend, the one with Asperger's too, he sort of like whispers or says something in a low voice to me, said, pick this guy, pick this guy. Now, I'm not going to mention like names that reveal a person, but if it's something like James or John or something, of course, I mean, there's tons of James and Johns around the world. I'm just using that as an example. But this one, I never met another person with this name, so I'm thinking it's unique, so I don't want to say what the name is. But I was like, who? And he said, this guy. And I'm like, who names their child after a bird and such? I thought, because I never heard that. I thought it was neat. It was unique. I liked it. I liked the name, and then I found out later that wasn't actually spelled like the bird, but it sounded like the bird. I thought that was neat, but I never met anybody else with that name before. So I'm like, okay. So when the coach came to me, he said, okay, pick your guy or two guys or something, and I went ahead and said the name aloud. And then the coach repeated the name, and all of a sudden a person stands up over there. I didn't know who he was talking about. I just said the name, but he wanted him on the team, so he stood up and just acted all confused. And the coach said something like, "You're picked, come on, let's go." And so he sort of like seemed confused, and then sort of moped down the bleachers and then came over. And as he was coming over, I'll never forget it, he said something like, "Dude, why'd you pick me?" and such. And then the coach got mad and said, "Hey, he could pick whoever he wants, okay?" or something like that. And it's like, the other guy, I didn't pick you. I mean, I like to get to know you, like as a friend and such, but just don't talk to me like that and such. I mean, I was a little. I mean, if you follow this channel, then this is to no surprise to you about social interactions and receiving negative feedback about throughout the last 20 years of my life and such. But anyway, well, long story short, that same person that told me to pick him said, I didn't say that name, I said pick Ryan. I'm like, Ryan and this other guy, well, kind of it sounds the same, but I'm sure I heard you say this name. Well, I went ahead and picked Ryan anyway, and so Ryan came down. I didn't actually know who he was until he stood up. And so basically for the rest of that segment we continued picking teams and such. So you gotta understand, here is a person, I thought I heard the name, a name I never heard before. I still think it's unique. To me it sounded like he said a certain name, but it was really Ryan, which is a common name. That's why I'm mentioning Ryan by first name, because there's lots of Ryans in this world. It won't identify that person. And what are the chances that I misinterpreted that for a unique sounding name, and then of all billions of people in the world, there just happened to be that person with that unique sounding name and such. And I told that to my friend who has Asperger's as well. And I wanted to say, I think I ultimately did later on, tell that to that person that just got angry with me. But I just lost my nerve. I was like tongue-tied. I couldn't speak at that moment. Well, anyway, by the time we were done picking out team captains, or not team captains but our teams, we had little time left, so it was basically free play. I'm like, okay, that's over with. So we went out into the field and it was just free play, and really nobody knew what they were doing. So we're just I guess passing the football back and forth. So we're all the way on the far end of the field, and I was just standing there. I didn't really understand exactly what was going on. Where is the rest of my team and everything? And all my life it always seems that everybody knew more than I did. Like they were like they knew what was going on, and I was the only one that didn't. That's what it felt like. And it didn't matter if I was 8, 9 years old or if I was 15 years old and such. And I saw those that person I picked, and he had a circle of friends, and he seemed to be the leader of his circle of like 3, and so there's like 2, like one on each side of him. And I saw him from a distance, and I overheard him saying like what is going on here anyway? And then he looks at me and says, oh, let's ask the team captain. The captain would know. And I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. So they're just marching to me, and he was like, so what are we doing? And I'm like, because, you know, after what happened earlier and then him approaching me again like that, I was like tongue-tied or so. It was like my traumatizing experience at Ralph's that I posted a YouTube video earlier this year about, that happened on March 13th this year. It was kind of the same thing, you know, when that manager at Ralph's, you know, yelled at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" I was like tongue-tied. I was spitting and sputtering. I mean, I mean, I couldn't speak. I was mute, even though I knew what was going on. It's like I couldn't defend myself and such. Well, likewise, 10 years ago, September 24th, and you know, I just said I don't know, and then he yelled at me and said, "You don't know? You're the captain," and such. And I'm like, yeah, I think it's just free play, and that's how I understand it. And you know, he just, you know, I guess grunted and walked off with his two friends. I mean, one of his friends, the shortest one, kind of looked up at me and said, "Dude, I gotta," and then I won't finish the sentence. So anyway, so already this is kind of at the start of some interesting relationship going on, camaraderie going on. So I try to forget it. The worst part is that it was a Friday, and sometimes these things happen on Fridays. That means I have to dwell an entire week over it, because, you know, I'm usually home, you know, just home. I mean, usually I don't have anything to do besides church on Sunday, and you know, I usually stay home on Saturdays. No one knew like what loneliness I was living with, and therefore they didn't know, I guess, to ask me. And then the few times I was asked, or I just got nervous. I mean, that's autism for you. But anyway, and usually when I'm by myself and such, especially when something like this happens, I can't stop thinking about it. It makes me feel worse and such. So, and that wasn't like the first Friday, it wasn't the last Friday when something happened. I had to dwell on it all weekend. Well, anyway, moving on to September 30th, 2010, on this day, we were playing flag football again. So this was a Thursday. So we had Tuesday. I forget what happened Tuesday, but it probably wasn't like interesting or so. But that Thursday, the 30th, 10 years ago, 1 decade ago today, we were out playing flag football again, and you know, I guess deep down inside, I there's like this magnet or something, a bad type of magnet or repulsion, you know, like dark, you know, energy or presence or something, and I just did not want to make matters worse. I mean, true, the only reason I became a captain is just so that I could, you know, get out there and not worry about if I accidentally embarrass myself or say the wrong thing or get the wrong answer, even though this was physical education. I just needed to get out there and such. And I have no idea how to play football or flag football as much. I mean, I learned as I went along. But, and also those two friends that I picked, the first two friends that I picked, one of them later on told me, "Hey, if you become captain again, you don't have to pick us because we're your friends," or something like that. And anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there, and you can interpret that however it's supposed to be interpreted, and then tell me about it. So, but anyway, getting back onto the serendipity, getting back on track or something. It was, you know, September 30th, like, you know, kind of like today, a blue sky, nice day and such. And I think something happened, and I can't remember exactly. I have a couple of fragmented memories. I'm not sure if it's ascribed to this day or not, but I remember I think something happened with that guy, and something like maybe he yelled at me again or something. I just remember feeling, you know, pitiful and low and emotional and such, just, you know, like at the lowest part of my life again. You know, not the first time, certainly not the last time. I have another physical education story from the year prior, but I gotta stay on track here. And as an autistic, it's hard for me to stay on track, so I'm trying to stay on track. And so all of a sudden we hear like this huge, you know, plane sound. And you know, we live right next to John Wayne Airport. Well, okay, not right next to it, but we see the planes take off, and then in certain, you know, atmospheric conditions, we see them coming in for a landing. Well, I know the sound of planes, you know, regular jets and such, but this one I knew it had to be some form of military plane. plane. I mean, it echoed. And our team had to be facing this way to the goal, and the sound was coming behind us. And whenever there's like a sound or a siren, as an autistic, I have to like see what it is and everything. And usually people don't really pay that much attention to these things, but I wanted to see, and I was afraid if I looked up, then like the football was going to come my way and hit me or something. But anyway, I had to. I looked up, and beyond the stadium was this like big, just military plane coming out with all echoing sound and everything. I heard one of my other friends, I forget if he was an opponent or if he was on my team, but I heard another friend call out to another person saying, "Hey, that's this bomber." I guess he knew what type of bomber it was. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I actually said that in my journal. Yeah, here on page 179, we also saw a military plane. If you're wanting to read the journal entry, I have a link down below to Twitter where I copied and transcribed this journal and posted it on Twitter if you're curious about it. But I might as well read this day, starting with football. In PE, someone kicked the football on our side, and it bounced, and I caught it. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to run or not. I don't know. I really don't know football, or all that much, that is. So I just stood there for 3 to 5 seconds until I passed it. We also saw military planes, so I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I think I remember. I must have caught it and passed it to one of my teammates and such. So like I was saying, I just learned as I went along. Having the knowledge of how to play now, a teammate passed me the football, and this is where the greatest victory happened. I was just standing right over here. To my right was out of bounds, to my left were my teammates, and over there were my opponents. And usually stories like in the movies or television shows never happen. Almost like whenever there's like like either a bully or either just a person that just misunderstands you and such, and usually toward the middle or climax of the movie or the show, something happens, and I'm like, well, that hardly ever happens in real life. But somehow I had the football in my hand, and I'm slowing this down from real time. I had the football in my hand, and I'm like, all my opponents are way over there and such. Did anyone realize that I even had the football? The out of bounds were right here, and I had a clear path straight ahead. And so I booked it. And I said that in my journals. I booked it, and I ran, and I continued to run. And I looked to my left, and I saw 1 or 2 teammates like beside me, like running with me and such. And then I think I started to hear chatter. I don't know, everything's a blur, auditory blur, I guess. But people probably said, "Oh, look, he has the football," or something. And then that's when people started to come toward me. And then, I saw my teammates. I saw that the one closest to me was that person, the person that raised his voice, the person that sort of yelled at me and sort of bruised my feelings and all that. I mean, understandably so in certain parts. But I just continued to run, and I looked at him, and he looked over at me, just a subtle look. I mean, not a disapproving look, not really a smile, and then you look back down. And I just continued to run, and I crossed the line. And I'm not really much into sports, but I took that football and I slammed it down on the grass. I just took that victorious breath of air, and everybody began cheering, or at least my teammates did. I don't remember about my opponents, but my teammates just began to, cheer and such. And it's like I made that victory. And from then on, that person became an acquaintance, and I would consider him a friend. And we started to talk to each other. We started to wave at each other. We started to, there wasn't that grudge anymore at that point. And I think that was one of the greatest victories of my life. And I'll comment on that here shortly. But I told everybody, I mean, I just couldn't hold it in. I mean, I'm autistic. I mean, I have to speak things out, and I tried to do things in a non, arrogant way, and I just don't want people to think that I'm, trying to boast or anything like that. But, I just told a few people here and there, including the coach, and, after everything was over, and done with, and we were going back to the locker room, I told that coach, the aforementioned coach, and there's a few of them, but I told this one the great news. Hey, I made a touchdown today, probably one of my first ones, if not the first one. He smiled at me and said, I saw that. I'm like, in my mind, you saw that? Wow. I mean, I didn't know that he saw that, and just how he responded back to me, and that approving, manner, just made me even feel, more special and such. Well, we continued to play flag football for the rest of the unit and such before moving on to other sports. There was a peculiar time though, and I believe it was afterward. I believe it was some day afterward, I could be sure. And I'm sorry, I just don't know a lot about football or sports. I'm more into math and history and such at this point. And I remember, I don't know how this looked, it must have looked ridiculous or something, but see, I didn't know, but at one point, the football came my way, and I'm like the tallest person. I just held up my hand and the football just bounced off. And so a couple of my teammates started cheering like, yeah, Matt, or something like that. Next time, catch the ball and run. I'm sorry, I mean, at least he cheered. I mean, he wasn't mean or anything like that. But that person that I just made amends with, that ninth grader, that person that I made amends with, he I don't know if I remember correctly, and this is like a visual blur to me now, he sort of, I think he was jogging but then slowed down, or maybe he was just walking, and he was walking my direction. And if this makes sense so far, he was saying, I believe he said like 2 words, but I don't want to repeat it because I don't know how to interpret those 2 words. I'm not sure if he was calling me a good name or a bad name, so I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, last thing I feel on my heart, I feel in my heart to say is, it is true. This one little tiny 20 or 30 minute long, who knows how long it was, maybe 15-20 minute game that we played in high school co-ed physical education. This one little insignificant victory I consider as being one of the greatest victories in my life. So I think that should tell the world, wherever this video is going, something about me or about us. Hopefully people get encouragement about us, not just me or something like that. Just to understand who we are and such, not who I am, but who we are. And sometimes that's the truth. I mean, it's like, that's all. I mean, what about other adventures you have? I mean, didn't you do this or do that or hang out with your friends? And the answer's no, for the most part. Yes, I did spend time with friends, but very, very subtle. I mean, if you know me, or if you followed me, or if you read my book and such, I mean, I had neighbors who were my age that would literally take a vote to vote me out and such. I would, especially in elementary school, I mean, people were mad and annoyed just because of who I was and everything. And I began to, make more friends and such, but it wasn't until middle school till I found out what outings were, or hanging out. And that was a disaster. That's a long story. I might as well not say that for brevity's sake, but maybe that might be another video. As, the next year, like in junior year, what happened then during a week off break, I tried to, call a few of my friends, and that was a disaster. I mean, that was a tragic comedy, literally a tragic comedy, and such a what happened. I mean, that's like another video on itself too, about that. But I allegorized that in my book. Well, not the book I have now, but my upcoming trilogy, like book 3, I believe, and I allegorized that, about trying to call friends during the weekend. Anyway, that was a disaster too. But anyway, but basically the point is yep, it's true that this one little tiny insignificant thing from flag football in PE wouldn't, I mean, I'm sure it was something insignificant that wouldn't make the Beacon, the school newspaper, much less, or the former school newspaper, much less, outside campus of what happened and such. I mean, and I understand that, and I know that, and maybe that might tell people, the type of, life I've lived, a very shy and bashful life as an autistic and such, and everything, and I try not to get sad about that, and I hope that nobody else gets sad about that. If you're in high school, it's not too late. If you're in elementary school or middle school, please just, get out there and such. The irony is that I knew this entire time, like since middle school, that I'm supposed to, get out there. I mean, especially while I still can, and everything, get out there and basically take chances and such, like raise your hand, put yourself as a captain and such, and just get out there, because I would give anything to go back and such and change a few things, but I can't anyway. And that's the irony, because that's what people have told me when I was, for instance, getting into high school, when I first entered high school and such. That's what people told me. It's like, I know, but you don't have autism. You have no idea what it's like to be socially, like shy and bashful and such. But now I'm just hoping to be an encouragement for everybody and such. So anyway, that's an autistic's greatest victory, or at least one of them. I mean, I would consider getting the Gold Medal of Achievement at Royal Rangers a victory. That's an Eagle Scout equivalent. And even coming back as a commander and being a commander for over 7 years is even a greater victory than earning a medal. I know that I'm helping people. I'm helping a lot of boys from K through 12, like over 100 or two by now, at least, that I know of. And I'm part of Royal Ranger groups all across the country and the world, and I hear that I'm helping them. So that's like it makes my day right there and such, knowing that I'm a help, and I want to continue to be a help. That's why I'm asking a lot, like, if you know anybody in the television industry, radio, podcast, or news, or newspaper, please put my information down so that I could continue to be a help. Anyway, that's pretty much all I want, is to be a help and all that. So anyway, stay strong and have an excellent day.